Hey guys, in this video, let us see an example of one-to-many relationship using Spring Data-jpa. When we talk about one-to-many relationship, we can think on many examples. Let us see a few examples. One department having many students, or one department having many employees, one customer having many accounts, one shopping cart having many items, one restaurant selling many food items. Then one student taking many assignments, one teacher having many students. When you are working with one-to-many relationship, it is mandatory that you need to validate on both the sides, or else it may become many-to-many. Like how? One department having many students. Many students belong to one department. One customer having many accounts. Many accounts belong to one customer. So if this is the scenario, then it works perfectly fine for one-to-many. Let me take one more example. One trainer taking many courses. If the courses are not unique, say for example, simply if I am having the course name as Java, Spring, Angular, then one trainer can take many courses like Java, Spring, Angular, and one course can be taken by many trainers. So in that scenario, it becomes many to many. One trainer taking many courses, one course taken by many trainers. But if the course name is unique, say instead of Java, if I am giving the course name as Java 101, Spring 101, in this case, only this particular trainer can take Java 101. Only a particular trainer can take Spring 101. If it becomes unique, then in that scenario, you can go in for one to many. So to avoid that confusion, you need to validate on both the sides whether the course taken by the trainer is unique. Now let us come to this restaurant and food items. One restaurant selling many food items. Many food items are sold by one restaurant. Suppose if the restaurant name is Taj and if the food item name is dosa, you should not get confused with the dosa which is sold by some other restaurant because it is unique. So that is what is mandatory in case of one-to-many relationship. If you feel that it is not unique, then the relationship will turn out to be many-to-many. Okay. Now for our example, let us consider restaurant and food items. The reason for me to take this example is we will have many methods to work with derived queries. Okay. Now let me write both the classes. One is restaurant. The other class name is item. Instead of food item, let me have it as item. Here I will have restaurant ID, restaurant name, city and type. Whether it's a veg restaurant or non-veg restaurant. Then in case of item, item ID, item name, price, cuisine, whether it is South Indian, North Indian, Italian, continental, then category, whether it is a starter or main course or soup, dessert. So these many instance variables are enough for item class. As we discussed, one restaurant has many items. So we need to add a list of item in the restaurant class. List of items. To avoid duplicates, instead of using list, we can go in for set. Okay. Now because this is an application which is going to work with Spring Data-jpa, this particular instance variable should be annotated with at one-to-many annotation. Together with that, we will be adding few more annotations. While doing the application, we will talk about that. Okay. This is in terms of Java classes. What are the two tables that will be generated? One will be the restaurant table. The other one will be the item table. This is my restaurant table. This is my item table. In the restaurant table, we have restaurant ID, restaurant name, and city and type. In item table, we have item ID, item name, item price, cuisine and category. Okay, we need to map both the tables. How to map the restaurant and the item table? It means I need to have the foreign key in any one of the table. That is, I should add either item ID to restaurant table or restaurant ID to item table. Okay, we will discuss what should be added where. So to start with, let us create one restaurant. The restaurant ID is 1. The restaurant name is Taj. City is Bangalore. Type is non-veg. Now, let us add few items for this particular restaurant Taj. So, I am going to add 3 items. Item ID is 10, name is Faluda. Then item ID 20, name is fried rice. Item ID is 30, name is biryani. Now I have added 3 items. ID 10, 20 and 30. So name is Faluda, fried rice and biryani. Now how to map these two tables? Should I add the restaurant ID in the item table or should I add the item ID in the restaurant table? If I have to add the item ID in the restaurant table, then this row should be coming thrice. 1 Taj, Bangalore, non-veg. Then item ID 10. 1 Taj, Bangalore, non-veg, item ID 20. 1 Taj, Bangalore, non-veg, item ID 30. It means that you are again replicating the rows and which is not possible. The ID over here is unique. You cannot repeat it again and again. So you cannot add the item ID to the restaurant table, but you can add the restaurant ID to the item table. So here I will have the restaurant ID and then I will add it as 1. Suppose I have the next restaurant 2. Restaurant ID is 2, restaurant name is Keys. And for this particular Keys, I have noodles. Item ID is 40 and I have it as noodles. Now what we can do here, it is 40, noodles and then the restaurant ID is 2. So in case of one-to-many relationship, the foreign key will be available on the many side. When we were doing one-to-one, what we have learnt is whatever instance variables are there, they will be converted into columns in your database table. Of course, here it has been converted. Restaurant ID, restaurant name, city, type. Similarly, item ID, item name, price, cuisine and category. What about list of items? In case of list of items, it will not be converted into a column in restaurant table, but the ID of the restaurant will be added as a foreign key to the item table. But it will not happen automatically. When you run this application as such, Spring will not add the foreign key here to this item table. Instead, it will create a separate table, a junction table or an intermediate table, which will have both the restaurant ID and the item ID. As per our example, the restaurant ID is 1, item ID is 10. Restaurant ID 1, item ID 20. Restaurant ID 1, item ID 30. Restaurant ID 2, item ID 40. Restaurant ID 2, item ID 50. So technically you will be having 3 tables. One is the restaurant table where all the instance variables are converted into columns. The other one is item table where again all the instance variables are converted into columns, and a junction or intermediate table which is going to have the IDs of both the classes. But if you feel that you do not want to have this extra table and you want to add the restaurant ID to the item table here, in that scenario, you need to add few more annotations and inform Spring that please add the restaurant ID to the item table. Okay, now let us see this as an example in STS. Let us create the application. File, New, Spring Starter Project. The application name is Spring JPA one-to-many. Type is Maven. Packaging is jar. Java version is 11. Language is Java. Group ID is com.restaurant app. Package is com.restaurant app. Click next. Downgrade the Spring Boot version to 2.7.8. Select spring-data-jpa and select MySQL driver. Click finish. First, let us create the model classes. Select your package, right click, new class. Class name is restaurant. It is in model package. Now let me add the instance variables that we have discussed. These are the instance variables. First, let me add the appropriate annotations. At entity, above the restaurant class. Then for the restaurant ID, I need to add at ID annotation. I want to auto generate the ID. The name of the sequence is restaurant underscore sequence. Initial value 100, allocation size is 1, that is increment is 1. And also let me give the size for restaurant name, column length equal to 30. Similarly for city and type. For type I can have it as 10. Now let us create a default constructor, getter setter methods and toString. We need to have a parameterized constructor also, but we have not created the item class. First let us create the item class, add it as a list and then generate the parameterized constructor. So select the model package, right click new class name is item, annotate the class with that entity. Now let me add the instance variables for this item class. Now my item class is also ready. The item class has item ID, item name, category, cuisine and price. For item ID, I am auto generating it, so I have added all the 3 annotations. Okay. Now let me create the default constructor, parameterized constructor without item ID, getter setter methods and toString. Okay, this is all for the item class. Now let me go to the restaurant class. Here let us add it. Set items. You can give it as items or items list or items set. And this instance variable should be annotated with at one to many. If you are just going to add only at one to many, then as I told you, 3 tables will be generated. One will be the restaurant table, the other one will be the item table, the third one will be a junction table with the name restaurant underscore item. We will first see all the tables and then we will modify the code. Okay. Now let me add a parameterized constructor by adding items also. Guys, this is a console based application. This is not a REST API. So we need to feed in the values. I do not want to call setter method again and again. That is why I am going in for a parameterized constructor. Generate constructor using fields. Unselect restaurant ID. Click generate. And for items also we need to create getter setter methods. Do not forget that. Go to source. Generate getter setters for items. Click generate. Okay. So both the model classes are ready and we have added all the appropriate annotations also. Now let us create the service package. The interface name is iRestaurant Service. The package name is com.restaurantapp.service. And let us add few methods. So these are the methods that I have added for restaurant service. Add restaurant, update, delete, get all and get by ID. For all these methods, we will be calling the inbuilt methods of JPA repository and CRUD repository. Then derived queries, get by city and get by type. Based on the property, we will call them directly. The last 2 methods are custom queries, get by item name, get by cuisine. Either you can go in for custom queries or you can go in for native queries. We will try to do this if possible, or else we will move it on to the next video. Okay. For this interface, we need to create the implementation class restaurant service IMPL. Implements iRestaurant service. Annotate the class with @service annotation. Override all the methods. Okay. Before writing the logic, let us create the repository interface also. Select your package, right click, new interface. It should be inside repository package. Interface name is iRestaurant repository. And this should be annotated with @repository. This interface should extend our JPA repository. The first parameter represents the entity class name, which is restaurant. The second parameter is the data type of the primary key. Of course, it is integer. Okay. Now let us go back to restaurant service IMPL. All these errors are there because we have not saved restaurant service. Click save all. The errors will be gone. private I restaurant repository. Use a setter method and auto wire it. Add at auto wire annotation. Now let us try calling all the methods one by one. I hope you know the basics of JPA, so I don't have to tell much about this. We are going to call the inbuilt methods which are already there in JPA repository or CRUD repository. For add restaurant alone, I have given the return type as restaurant. Okay, here it is. Restaurant repository dot save by passing the restaurant object. For this also the method name is same, restaurant repository dot save restaurant. One thing you need to understand about the save method is when an object is passed to the save method, it will check for the ID. If the ID is not available at all, it will auto generate the ID and then create a new row in the database table. If the ID is already available, then it will check whether the ID is available in the database table. If it is not available in the database table, it will insert that particular object as a new row. If the ID is already available in the database table, then it will update the existing row. That is the purpose of the save method. That is why we are using the same save method in both add restaurant and update restaurant. In case of add restaurant, if you are not passing the ID, it will generate a new row. If you are manually passing the ID, it will check whether the ID is available. If it is not available, it will create it as a new row. In case of update restaurant, it is mandatory that you need to pass an existing ID. If you are passing a new ID, it will automatically create it as a new row. The next one is delete restaurant. Restaurant repository dot delete by ID by passing the restaurant ID. Then get all. Restaurant repository dot find all. This method alone is from JPA repository. Rest of the methods, whatever we have seen till now, they are all from CRUD repository. And this is restaurant repository dot find by ID, which returns an optional. Always remember, if a method is returning an optional, the optional may have the solid value or it can be empty. So you need to do an empty check before returning the value to the other class. So instead of having a return statement, let us get the value in an optional. Restaurant optional is equal to import optional. We will do a empty check. If restaurant optional dot two methods are there, is empty or is present. I will go in for is present, then return restaurant optional dot get, else return null. If the ID is available, this restaurant repository dot find by ID will return an optional with the restaurant value. If the ID is not available, then this method will return an empty optional. Based on the optional that you are getting, you need to do a empty check and then only you need to return the value. Okay. So we have completed the logic for all the inbuilt methods. For the derived queries and custom queries, we will write it out later. Now let us go to the main class. The main class, implement command line runner, override run method. We need to auto wire restaurant service. Restaurant service. Add setter method, or we can do field injection also. Auto wire. Now within this, we need to create a restaurant object. Restaurant equal to new restaurant of, let us use the parameterized constructor. Restaurant name, type, city and set of items. City Bangalore and set of items. So we need to create a set of items. Set of items. Items is equal to new hash set. Use the constructor which takes collection as parameter. It means that you need to create a list of items and pass it over here. So first let me create 3 item objects. Item 1 equal to new item. Item name, category, cuisine and price. Item name dosa. Category breakfast. Design South Indian. Price 100. Item 2. Now we need to add all the items to a list. List of items list equal to arrays.asList by passing all the 3 items. Now pass this items list inside the constructor. And the last parameter over here should be items. So these two can be done in a single line also. I'll comment this. I can even directly take arrays.asList and put it over here. Fine. Now my restaurant object is ready. I need to call add restaurant method. Restaurant service dot add restaurant by passing the restaurant object. Now the application is ready. We need to add the configuration details in application.properties. We need to add data source specific properties and JPA specific properties. You already know, in case of data source specific properties, add URL, username and password. In case of JPA specific properties, add the database dialect, DDL auto, and if required, show SQL. The database name is Academy DB. DDL auto should be create. Okay. Select your application. Now run the application. Run a Spring Boot app. Click OK. Let me maximize the console. Because we have given create, it will drop all the tables if they exist. In our case, it doesn't exist. So what are the tables that are getting generated? Item underscore sequence, restaurant underscore sequence. Together with that, it is also creating a junction table with the name restaurant underscore items, which is going to have the restaurant ID and the item ID. You can see this restaurant underscore ID. Restaurant is the class name, so it is taking restaurant underscore ID. And in the restaurant class, we are having an instance variable with the name items. Set of items we have given, no? Set of items underscore item underscore ID. Okay. So how many tables are there totally? Item underscore sequence, restaurant underscore sequence 4, and finally restaurant underscore items. So these are the tables that are getting generated. Then after that, it is supposed to insert the values into the restaurant. Before inserting the values into the restaurant, it is supposed to insert the values into the items table. But we are getting an error, an exception. Invalid data access API exception. That is transient object exception. First I am supposed to save the item object before saving the restaurant object into the restaurant table. So what should I do? I have to go and add cascade. So open the restaurant class in one-to-many. Cascade equal to cascade type.all. Now let me save this and let me run the application. The application ran successfully. Here you can see all the values are getting inserted into restaurant and also to the item table. Now let me open MySQL command line. Here you can see the list of tables that are generated. Item underscore sequence, restaurant underscore sequence, and restaurant underscore items. Let us also check the data in the table. Select star from restaurant. Select star from item. And select star from restaurant underscore items. Items is the name of the instance variable that you have given in the restaurant class. Here you can see the restaurant ID is 100 and item ID is 1213. Now I do not want this table at all. Okay, first let us drop this table. Drop table restaurant underscore items table. Yeah, this table is dropped. Now let me go back here. I do not want to create a junction table. So to prevent creating a junction table or the intermediate table, use the annotation at join column. If you see, we have used at join column annotation in one-to-one relationship also. There, the purpose of adjoint column was to give a different name for the foreign key. Here, the join column is used to remove the intermediate table that was getting created. So, inside this, name equal to whatever properties or whatever instance variables that you are having in this class will be converted into columns in the same class itself. But in case of items, it will not be added to the restaurant table, but it should be added to the items table. In the items table, the column name that should be added is restaurant ID. So pass the column name that should be added to the items table. It is restaurant ID. Now let me save this. We will rerun the application. Let me maximize the console. If you notice, this time restaurant underscore items table will not be generated. Instead, the item table is getting altered and the foreign key restaurant ID is added to the items table. And let me scroll down little. In the item table, after the column values are added, it is finally updating the restaurant ID also. Now let us check this in MySQL command line. Show tables. Restaurant underscore items table is not there. Select star from restaurant. Select star from item. Now one extra column is added to item table. The column name is restaurant underscore ID. And this column represents the foreign key. Restaurant ID is the foreign key sitting in item table. So now we have learned how to do one-to-many mapping using Spring Data JPA. That's all. Thank you.